In the center of the room stood a massive, filthy container filled with dead bodies' water. Around it were smaller buckets containing poops. "Mama Ada, what is this?" Mama Alice asked, horrified. "This," Mama Ada said, gesturing to the container, "is the secret to my success. It's water from the mortuary, the essence of the dead. Those are the water they bath dead bodies in the mortuary. It enhances the flavor of the food and binds your customers to you. They won't just love your food, they'll crave it. They won't be able to eat anywhere else. All I do is to collect small quantity of the dead body's water and the poop and mix it with my food when cooking," Mama Ada said with a smile. The clamor began as early as 11:30 a.m. each day. A long line of students, clad in neatly ironed blue and white uniforms, snaked around the giant mango tree near the central field of St. Thomas Boys College. At the center of it all was Mama Alice. Known to everyone, students and staff alike, as Mama put, her small food stall was a hive of activity, the aroma of her meals tantalizing enough to make even the school's most stoic teacher salivate. She served plates of smoky jollof rice, tender fried plantains, spicy agusi soup, and soft pounded yam, each dish leaving tongues wagging for more. No one could resist her culinary magic. Students abandoned the school's refectory, preferring to scrape together their last naira for a plate of Mama Put's food. Even the principal, Mr. Ade, was a regular, though he always sent his driver to fetch his meals. In less than 2 years, Mama Alice had transformed from a struggling food vendor to the unofficial celebrity of St. Thomas. Her meals became a mandatory part of life for both students and teachers. Her fame spread beyond the school gates, and parents often joked about visiting just to have a taste. But no one questioned her success. It hadn't always been this way. Just 2 years ago, Mama Alice sat under that same mango tree, praying silently for even one customer. Her pots of food stood untouched for hours as students breezed past, laughing and chatting, heading for the school shop to buy snacks and drinks. They never gave her a second glance. Day after day, she packed up her unsold meals, whispering words of encouragement to herself as she dragged her wheelbarrow back home. Each night, she warmed up the food for the next day, hoping against hope that someone would buy it. But the food went bad, and she was forced to throw it away. Mama Alice's small room in the nearby town was a reflection of her life then, cramped, dimly lit, and filled with despair. Her husband had died years ago, leaving her with their only son, Gabriel, who was now in university. With mounting bills and no income, she spent sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, wondering how she would survive another day. One particularly heart-wrenching night, as the moonlight filtered through her window, she made a decision. She would not let poverty swallow her alive. The next morning, she packed a small bag, locked her house, and set out for the neighboring town to visit her childhood friend, Mama Ada, a woman whose food business had become the talk of the town. Little did Mama Alice know, this visit would change her life forever. The journey to Mama Ada's town was a long and dusty one. Mama Alice arrived exhausted but hopeful, clutching the little money she had saved in her bag. Mama Ada's food stall, located at the heart of the bustling town market, was as lively as Mama Alice had imagined. A large crowd surrounded her, with customers shouting their orders and others begging for a chance to taste her famous delicacies. "Mama Alice, my long-lost sister," Mama Ada exclaimed when she spotted her friend in the crowd. She waved her assistant over to take charge of the stall and led Mama Alice to the back, where a small, secluded room served as her private office. The two women exchanged pleasantries, catching up on lost time. But Mama Alice soon laid her struggles bare, her voice cracking as she described her failed attempts to sell food to the students at St. Thomas. "I've tried everything, Ada. My food is good, but no one seems to care. I'm at my wit's end," Mama Alice confessed, her eyes brimming with tears. Mama Ada leaned back in her chair, her face unreadable. After a long pause, she sighed. "Alice, you've always been a hard-working woman. But sometimes hard work alone doesn't cut it. You need something extra." Mama Alice looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Mama Ada stood up and beckoned for Mama Alice to follow her. They exited the market and walked down a narrow, dimly lit alley that reeked of decay. At the end of the alley stood a decrepit building with no signboard, its windows covered with grime. Mama Ada unlocked the rusty door and led Mama Alice inside. The stench hit Mama Alice first, a foul, suffocating odor that made her gag. In the center of the room stood a massive, filthy container filled with dead bodies' water. Around it were smaller buckets containing poops. The whole kitchen was very dirty, with rotten poop and some animal decay all over the place, unlike the one Mama Alice saw at her restaurant in the market. "Mama Ada, what is this?" Mama Alice asked, horrified. "This," Mama Ada said, gesturing to the container, "is the secret to my success. It's water from the mortuary, the essence of the dead. Those are the water they bath dead bodies in the mortuary. It enhances the flavor of the food and binds your customers to you. They won't just love your food, they'll crave it. They won't be able to eat anywhere else. All I do is to collect small quantity of the dead body's water and the poop and mix it with my food when cooking," Mama Ada said with a smile. Mama Alice staggered back, her stomach churning. "Mortuary water? That's unthinkable." Mama Ada chuckled. "I know it sounds strange, but do you think all successful food vendors rely only on spices? This is the price of greatness, Alice. And it works." I could never," Mama Alice stammered, shaking her head. "Think about Gabriel," Mama Ada interrupted, her tone sharp. "You said he's in university, right? How long before he drops out because you can't pay his fees? How long before you lose that little room you live in? You came to me for help, and this is the only way." Mama Alice was silent, her thoughts racing. She hated the idea, but Mama Ada's words struck a chord. She had already hit rock bottom. What more did she have to lose? "I don't know if I can do it," she said weakly. "You can," Mama Ada said firmly. She handed Mama Alice a small bottle filled with the dead body's water and a plastic bag containing the poop. "Take these and try them. Start small. If you're serious, go to the mortuary at the edge of your town and collect more. But remember, this must remain a secret. Not a word to anyone." Mama Alice nodded, her hands trembling as she took the items. She spent the night at Mama Ada's house, her mind a battlefield of fear, desperation, and guilt. When she returned to St. Thomas the next day, she prepared her food as usual, but added a few drops of the mortuary water and a pinch of the other ingredient. She cooked with her heart pounding, terrified of what she was doing, but driven by a desperate hope that it might change her fate. The transformation was almost immediate. That day, a student named Daniel, a notorious foodie in the school, decided to try her food for the first time. He couldn't stop raving about it. When he bought the food and went inside his classroom to eat, just immediately he opened the food, the aroma filled the whole room, attracting many of his classmates. When Daniel took a spoonful of the food into his mouth, he screamed, "This is the best thing I've ever tasted," Daniel declared to his classmates. His classmates joined them and eat the food, and immediately after that moment, word spread like wildfire. By the next day, Mama Alice's stall was the talk of the school. Her rise had begun. Mama Alice's fortune soared overnight. By the end of her first week, using Mama Ada's secret, her food stall under the mango tree became the epicenter of activity at St. Thomas Boys College. The once empty queue grew so long that students started skipping their classes to ensure they got a plate. Daniel, the student who had first tasted her food, was now her unofficial brand ambassador, urging anyone within earshot to try her meals. Soon, even the teachers abandoned the school refectory for Mama Alice's stall. The refectory staff complained bitterly about dwindling patronage, but their grievances fell on deaf ears. Mama Put was a phenomenon, and no one dared question her meteoric rise. But with the increase in customers came a new challenge. Mama Alice's supply of special ingredients was running low. The small quantities she had collected from Mama Ada were no longer sufficient. She needed more and fast. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mama Alice ventured to the abandoned, uncompleted building behind the school. It was a known spot where students often defied school rules to relieve themselves, earning it the nickname Short Drop. The place was filthy and reeked of human waste, but desperation overrode her disgust. Armed with a cooler, Mama Alice began scooping the foul-smelling poop into it, her hands trembling with both fear and revulsion. Every evening, she repeated this ritual, ensuring she had enough to meet the demand for her food. By the second week, her business was booming beyond her wildest dreams. She purchased new pots, upgraded her utensils, and even hired 2 young boys to help serve customers. But with her success came an eerie development. One morning, during a mathematics lesson, Daniel, the same student who had praised her food, suddenly began vomiting uncontrollably in the classroom. Within hours, several other students reported similar symptoms: severe stomach pain, vomiting, and diarrhea. The school clinic was overwhelmed. Beds were filled to capacity, and the school nurse had to request emergency reinforcements from the nearest hospital. The epidemic grew worse with each passing day. Parents were called to pick up their sick children, and some even withdrew their wards from the school entirely. The administration was at a loss. The principal called an emergency staff and parents meeting, where the blame fell squarely on the refectory cooks. "I am withdrawing my only son from the school. I can't do this. You people can't take proper care of our children here, feeding them with unhealthy foods and water," one of the parents, Mrs. Tola, said. "The school cooks are probably using expired ingredients," one teacher suggested. "We need to fire them immediately and bring in new cooks," the principal declared. And so, the refectory staff was unceremoniously dismissed. But even with a fresh team of cooks, the sickness persisted. Meanwhile, Mama Alice's business continued to thrive. The irony was lost on everyone. How could the students be falling sick if they were eating from the refectory? No one thought to connect the epidemic to Mama Alice's food. One sunny afternoon, Gabriel, Mama Alice's son, paid her an unannounced visit. Now a second-year university student, he was proud to see his mother thriving. "Mama, look at this line. You've really made it," he said, beaming with pride as he joined the queue. Mama Alice's heart raced. She watched Gabriel pick up a plate of jollof rice, plantains, and chicken. He was about to take a bite when, without thinking, she slapped the spoon out of his hand. The plate tumbled to the ground, its contents scattering in the dust. "Mama, what's wrong with you?" Gabriel asked, shocked. Her sharp, warning glare silenced him. And then she whispered to his ears in their own language, "Don't eat the food," she hissed, her voice low but firm. Gabriel, though confused, obeyed his mother's unspoken command. He walked away, shaking his head, while the students in line continued as though nothing had happened. But two students, Victor and David, had been standing at the back of the queue and witnessed everything. These students left the queue and went to one corner of the buildings, curious. Victor asked, "Why did she let her son eat her food?" he whispered. "Maybe there's something wrong with it," David replied, his curiosity piqued. The two friends decided to investigate. That evening, Mama Alice closed her shop and packed her coolers and plates into her wheelbarrow and left for home. David and Victor followed Mama Alice after she closed shop. They kept their distance as she pushed her wheelbarrow down the dirt road, heading towards the uncompleted building. Hidden in the shadows, they watched as she entered the building and began scooping pulp into a cooler. The stench was unbearable, but Victor and David stayed quiet, their eyes wide with shock. "What's she doing with those smelling poop?" Victor asked, covering his nose. "I don't know, but we must surely find out. Maybe she's up to something," David replied. When Mama Alice finished and left for home, when she got to the school gate, the security officers allowed her out without even searching her. David and Victor decided to follow her further, though this time they encountered a problem. "We can't get past the security gate," Victor whispered. "Then we jumped a fence," David suggested. Victor hesitated. Jumping the school fence was a serious offense, punishable by expulsion. "No, my mother will skin me alive if the school security caught us," Victor said. But David's determination was infectious, and Victor finally agreed. They scaled the fence and continued trailing Mama Alice until they reached her home. From the shadows, they watched as she carried the cooler into her kitchen. Then Victor suggested they should just go back to their hostels. "No, Victor, we need proof," David whispered. "We'll stay here tonight and see what she does tomorrow morning." "What? You mean we should risk our lives? What if we are attacked by wild animals?" Victor said. Victor was reluctant, but he eventually agreed after David convinced him. Meanwhile, back in the school hostel, their hostel master, Mr. Jude, had come to take night roll call and check up on the students to make sure no one is missing. When he got to the bed where David and Victor do sleep, it was empty. He asked other students, and they said they don't know where they went. "This is it. They have jumped the school fence and have probably went to nightclub. I know all this SS3 boys. They are always stubborn," Master Jude said. Later on now, they would come back into the school with one sickness or the other, and their parents will start blaming the school for it. Master Jude said before grabbing a sheet of paper and wrote their names in the blacklist, to be punished severely the next day. David and Victor spent the night outside Mama Alice's house, huddled in a corner, their nerves frayed but their resolve strong. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the small cracks in Mama Alice's kitchen window as Victor and David, hiding at the corner of her house, stirred from their uncomfortable sleep. Their exhaustion was overpowered by anticipation and a strong sense of mission. David clutched his phone tightly. Though it was forbidden for students to own phones at St. Thomas, he had smuggled in his prized iPhone 13 Pro Max, and now it would serve as their weapon. As they peered through the small gap in the window, they watched Mama Alice begin her morning preparations. She opened the cooler containing the human stool, releasing a wave of foul odor that made Victor gag. David covered his mouth to stifle his own reaction. The scene unfolded as Mama Alice meticulously scooped a small amount of the stool, mixed it with the contents of her pots, and began cooking. The boys recorded everything, the phone capturing the damning evidence that could expose her monstrous secret. "Let's go," David whispered after they had recorded enough. Victor nodded, though his face was pale with a mixture of fear and disgust. "David, how are we going to do this? You know fully well that phones are not allowed in our school. The principal will seize your phone if he sees it." Victor said. "No, I won't let them seize my 13 Pro O," David replied. "When we get to the bridge, we will cross it, but for now, let's rush to the school." David added. The two boys slipped away quietly and hurried back to the school. They were feeling so exhausted and tired. They wanted to freshen up, but it was already late, as the hostile master is already chasing the students to the school assembled ground. David and Victor put on their school uniform without even taking their bath. Just as the morning assembly was about to start, the school principal, Mr. Ade, was on the assembly ground with his usual stern demeanor. He began with routine announcements, then shifted to the pressing issue of the epidemic. "Parents are threatening to withdraw their children," he declared, holding up a list of names. "But we will not tolerate indiscipline in the school either. 2 students have already been blacklisted for jumping the school fence." Immediately Victor heard this. His heart skipped a beat, and David's heartbeat increased too. Victor and David stepped forward. The principal says. The crowd of students turned to look as Victor and David nervously made their way to the front. "You both broke the rules," Mr. Ade said, raising his cane. "And you will be punished." Just he was about to lay the cane on the first student, which is Victor, who was already crying. David felt a pull inside him, and without a second thought he shouted. "Wait, sir," he interrupted, summoning his courage. The students gasped. It was unheard of to interrupt the principal. "I have something to show you," David continued, pulling out his phone. "What nonsense is this? You are forbidden to bring phone into the school. How dare you break the school rules for the second time?" Mr. Ade snapped. But David persisted, unlocking the phone and playing the video. The assembly fell silent as the footage of Mama Alice's actions played for all to see. The graphic images left everyone in stunned disbelief. "Mama Alice," one teacher whispered, her face pale. At that moment, Mama Alice arrived at the school gates, pushing her wheelbarrow full of food. When she saw the crowd gathered around David and realized what was happening, panic gripped her. She turned to flee, but the security officers caught her before she could escape. Mama Alice was immediately detained. Under intense interrogation, she admitted to everything but refused to reveal the source of her ingredients, protecting Mama Ada's secret. The police investigated her home, confirming the boys' allegations. The fallout was devastating. Many students who had fallen ill died to the sickness, while others suffered long-term health effects. Parents were outraged, and the school faced immense backlash. David and Victor, once marked for punishment, became heroes. They were celebrated by the school and parents alike, praised for their bravery and determination to uncover the truth. The principal, however, used the opportunity to emphasize discipline. "Let this be a lesson," he warned. "Breaking rules is still not condoned, but these boys have saved us all." Mama Alice was sentenced to life imprisonment. Her once thriving business lay in ruins, but she remained silent about Mama Ada. Meanwhile, in another town, Mama Ada's food stall continued to prosper, her dark secret hidden in plain sight. At St. Thomas Boys' College, the memory of the epidemic lingered long after Mama Alice's downfall. Students and teachers alike grew wary of street food, and the refectory saw a resurgence in patronage. Victor and David became legends within the school, their story told to every new batch of students. This school is about discipline and bravery, the principal would say, and we owe these boys a debt of gratitude. But for Victor and David, the experience left a lasting mark. They had uncovered a darkness they would never forget, a reminder that sometimes evil hides in the most unsuspecting places. This should sound as a warning to everyone to be mindful of the kind of food they eat out there, and to always be mindful of the poison their children takes in out there in the name of food. Always try to cook your own food, as that's the only way to escape this kind of ugly stories. If you love the story, kindly hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories, and don't forget to leave a comment and give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.